Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
This is my third time trying to do this video. A long time ago when I was in high school, I started hanging around this girl and kind of like started becoming a part of like her friend group. There was about 4 or 5 of us, and we would all just kind of collectively go over to her house to hang out, have bonfires, watch movies, whatever. We would stay the night, and I had already stayed over there. This friendship had kind of started over a course of a couple months. I had already stayed over there about 2 times, but on my 3rd time, I was sleeping on the couch in the living room, and at about 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up to a very loud bang, and it was so loud that it felt like to me that it shook the whole house. I don't know if it was actually that loud or if it just felt like that because I was asleep. I looked over at the couch next to me, to my friend Jessica, who was sleeping, and she didn't wake up. So I kind of thought maybe I imagined it, but the way that my friend's house was set up was that in the living room there was a wall, and on the other side of that wall was the kitchen, but there was 2 entrances, and you could see them both at the same time. So I was like, maybe somebody is trying to get them something to drink, they dropped a cup or something, I don't know. So for the next minute to 2 minutes I watched both entrances and I never saw anybody. So I was like, okay, so I'm just going to try to go back to sleep. So I just laid there with my eyes closed trying to go back to sleep, but I was getting in my head and I was freaking myself out. And I was getting scared. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go in the person's house that we were at, her bedroom, and sleep with our other friend, because the girl's house that we were staying at, she was sleeping in her mom's bedroom with her mom in her bed. And so I got up and I walked over to the couch that was next to mine, and I woke Jessica up and I said, hey Jess, I'm a little scared, like I'm gonna go sleep with our other friend in so-and-so's room, do you want to come with me? And she sat up, she looked me directly in the eyes, and she said, I'm not going anywhere with you. And she lay back down and she went to sleep. And I'm not gonna lie, my heart dropped to my stomach. And I just kind of was like, okay. And I walked out of the living room to take a left to go down the hall, and I looked into the kitchen and there was nobody there. And I said, interesting. So I walked down the hall and I go into that friend's room, and immediately the other friend wakes up and she's like, is everything okay? Like, and I'm like, yep, I'm just a little scared. Like, I'm just going to sleep in here with you. She's like, okay. She clocks out like 2 seconds later. I'm terrified, and I have the flashlight on my phone, laying on my chest, pointed up at the ceiling, illuminating the whole room, because I'm terrified to turn it off. Sorry, I gotta check my baby on the monitor. Anyway, so I cannot bring to turn my flashlight off. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to fall asleep with the flashlight on. Like, if my phone dies, it dies. Like, whatever. That's when I start hearing it in the kitchen. And the best way I can describe what this sounded like was if somebody were to pull out the utensil drawer, like that holds the knives, spoons, forks, and just dumped it on the floor. That's what that sounded like. And at this point, I start texting my older brother, because my older brother is like a gaming nerd, and he stays up all night playing video games and then sleeps until like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And so I know he's up. And so I'm texting him, I'm like, hey, I need you to come get me. I'm scared. Please answer, pick up the phone. Please text me back, blah, blah, blah. And the whole time I'm like, just spamming him with texts back and back and back and back. They're saying delivered. That's when it starts walking down the hall. And it's slowly walking down the hall, and it stops in front of the bedroom door. And then it walks back to the kitchen. And it does this several more times. When it started doing that, that's when I started calling my brother. And I'm calling him, and it's ringing, goes to voicemail. It's ringing all the way through and then going to voicemail. It's not like when you call somebody and their phone's off or dead and it just goes straight to voicemail. It wasn't like that. It was ringing. And I'm calling him. And every time he's not answering, I'm sending him 5 to 10 more texts. And then I'm calling him. All while whatever is in this house is walking up and down the halls. I come to the conclusion that my brother is not going to answer the phone. And that I have to plan my escape. So I put my hand on the door knob and I time it to where when this thing is walking back to the kitchen, I'm going to make a run for her mom's room. And so it starts walking back to the kitchen. I fling the door open and I take a hard left to her mom's bedroom. I do not look behind me. I didn't want to look behind me. I didn't want to waste the time. I was not curious enough to know what it looked like. I just needed to get through the door. And I throw open her door and I slam it shut and I go over to her mom's side of the bed and I jump on the bed and I'm hysterical. And I'm waking her up and I'm like, I gotta go. There's something in your house. I'm never staying here again. My brother's not answering my phone. And I don't really think it was registering to her what was going on because she was half asleep. It was like 3-4 o'clock in the morning by this time. And she just knows that I'm hysterical. And so she's like, you know what? Just lay here with me until your brother answers the phone. And I was like, okay. So I lay down next to her and I fall asleep. And I wake up at like 6 a.m. when the sunlight is shining through the windows. And I'm not scared anymore. So I get up, the whole house is still asleep, there's nobody else up. And I open the door and I look down the hall into the kitchen, there's nothing there. And I'm like, okay. So I collect all my stuff, I grab my keys, I walk out the front door, and I drive home and I pass out until like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. When I wake up, I go outside on our patio and I just kind of sit outside and think about what happened to me that night. And then my brother comes outside and he walks up to me and he sits next to me and he said, "Sissy, are you okay?" And I said, "I am now. Thank you for not responding to me when I needed you to come get me." And he said, "I just received all of your texts like 5 minutes ago." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, like when were you trying to get a hold of me?" And I was like, "At 3 a.m. And he was like, "I was up. I was playing video games." And he said, "I don't have any calls from you." And that was when I knew that whatever was in her house was blocking my texts and my calls from going through. But on my end, the calls were going through and my messages were being delivered. And I only stayed at her house one more time after that. It took a while for me to go back to stay at her house, stay the night. But when I did, something else did happen. And I never stayed the night again at her house after that. I did continue to go back over there and hang out with them. But I never stayed the night again.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I hope I'm not too late to add on to this, but this is one of my favorite scary stories to tell because it involves my family, and that never happens. But I have a couple from West Virginia. I went to school in West Virginia, so if you want to hear more, let me know. So I'm a Pisces. My birthday's February 28th, and last year on my birthday, my uncle who had stage 4 cancer passed away. We celebrated all day, and then at night is when I found out that he had passed. And I was obviously very sad, and we were kind of prepared for it, but still, nonetheless, very sad. After his passing, my dad was like, "We're gonna have him cremated." And that was honestly kind of surprising. But we decided to do it, and we kept his ashes in like the urn in our kitchen until the ceremony, which was also a little bizarre. My parents are very spiritual people, but also like my friends were like, "You keep him in your kitchen?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's fine. He's fine. He's family. He's in there." And he loved to like party. He loved to like have a little drinky drink. And in our kitchen is a bar, and it's usually stocked with like white wine and cheap champagne, usually Andre brand champagne. My uncle's name is Andre. So, a few days after he had been in our kitchen, I pour myself a glass of champagne, And I turn to him and I'm like, cheers to you. And this is probably around 11 or midnight. And I go downstairs to my room. So my house is separated by two floors. On the first floor is like the main floor. It's where the living room, kitchen, office, my parents' bedroom, like whatever. The bottom floor is like another whole apartment. It's a house, but like it's a whole like new flat. Like we have another living room, another kitchen, my room, which has two French doors with no windows. So they close like this, but it doesn't lock, so you can like hear through it. Laundry room, bathroom, and a sunroom. So that's the downstairs, and that's where I stay. So I take my glass of champagne and I go downstairs, drink it, think nothing of it. I watch some TV and I fall asleep. A few hours later, I hear my mom yelling for me at the top of the stairs. It's probably like 3 or 4 a.m. at this point, and I just hear her say, "Can you come to the kitchen real quick?" And I'm like still kind of eyes closed, like, what do you possibly need at the kitchen? What do you need from me at like 3 or 4 a.m.? Why do I need to come to the kitchen? And so I'm kind of like, what? Like, huh? What do you need? It's silent for a bit. I hear her walk down the steps. So you have to open a door to get down to the basement, and you have to walk down a series of 12 steps, and then it's probably like another like 10 steps to get to my room. I hear her walk like halfway down the steps, after the silence, and then she goes, "Can you come to the kitchen?" And it's not the most polite answer that I gave. I was like, "What do you need?" I'm like, I'm really exhausted. I'm like, "What do you need?" Again, silence. I hear her walk back upstairs, like walk back up like a few steps. She never closes the door. We always close the door. We have a dog. We have an elderly dog upstairs. And so she always closes the door, but she didn't. And I'm waiting to hear if she needs anything else. Dead silence for a very long time. So I just go back to sleep. In the morning, I go upstairs and I talk to my mom. Actually, no, I think I called her to come downstairs. And I was like, what did you need last night? Like, you called me to come to the kitchen super late. Like, what was going on? She was like, I didn't. No, I didn't. What do you mean? What do you mean? No, you didn't. I was like, yes, you did. You called me to come to the kitchen twice, and I asked what was going on. You never responded, and you just walked away. She was like, I was asleep the entire night. Like, this is one of the few nights I actually slept the entire night. Our whole family is like kind of insomniac, except for my dad. He can sleep through anything. So the fact that my mom slept through the entire night was bizarre. And also the fact that she's like, it wasn't me was bizarre because I specifically heard her voice. If I had heard anyone else's voice, I would have been terrified. I knew it wasn't my dad. He's going to sleep the entire night. So the fact that I heard her voice, I almost did it because that's my mom. That's my girl. Like, I would have been upstairs in that kitchen if she really needed me. Um, so that was really weird. And I told her last night I toasted Andre before I went to bed. And like I said, they're not really like spiritual or whatever, but she was like, that's really weird. I don't like this story. Like, don't tell your dad. Like, okay. But it was, I don't know what that was. Something that sounded exactly like her called me to come upstairs and then just disappeared. I choose to believe that it was likely Andre just like kind of toasting me back, but that was also so strange. And I definitely believe if I had heard his voice, I would have freaked out. So I kind of understand why it wasn't, you know, anyone else's voice, but what was going on? Does any other spiritual people, like, let me know in the comments if you have an idea what's going on. Because it felt like, it was definitely like a scary experience, but it also, in hindsight, doesn't feel like evil or negative. I don't know. I also have to say that in my parents' house, I've had a couple experiences where I have woken up from a dream just to wake up from a dream again. Like I'll be asleep and then my mom will come into my room and sit on my bed and like, like pat my leg or something and just like talk to me and I'll talk to her back for a little bit and then she'll leave and then I will wake up and I'll like look at my phone and I'll have like a text from my mom or something, but she has not come downstairs. Like we have not had a conversation. That's happened multiple times. When I'm in my room in the basement. Which is, it's quite cute down there. So like, it's not like really scary. At night, it is pitch black. I will say that. It is absolutely dark. dark, dark. Like, so it's a little creepy at times. I've just gotten used to it. Yeah, so that's my go-to story for now. But if you want to hear some about West Virginia, let me know, because I know that's kind of popular on here, and I do have some stories to tell. So, yeah.
A story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
Okay, excuse how I look, but I'm gonna try to be super quick when I tell this story. So this happened to me about a month ago, and I'm laying in my bed. I had just had the strangest dream in the world. And I woke up from my dream because, it was scary, like something was chasing me or whatever. And I went in the bathroom, and then I just woke up out of fear. And I just sat there, and I was just looking at my bedroom wall. The way my bed is set up, so like if you walk in my room and you look to the right, my bed is on the far left wall. And when I was sleeping, my back was turned to the door, so I couldn't see, anything. So I'm just chilling, right? And I'm laying there. Mind you, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I hear the loudest footsteps running through our house. Like, our house, we have, real hardwood floors. So you can hear when somebody's, walking through the house. Like, you can hear that. But somebody was in there running, and they wasn't running fast, girl. They wasn't stopping. But they did end up stopping, and they stopped at my room door. And I'm just laying in my room, and I'm looking at my wall, like, what? It just ran through the house and stopped at my door for some reason. Like, what was that? And then I hear my bedroom door open. I know what my door sounds like. Like, if you have, a newer house, you know how, if you open and close your door, it makes, a clicking noise or whatever. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But I heard my door open, and I'm just laying there, in fear. I've never felt so scared before in my life. I'm so serious. And I'm just laying there, and I feel something behind me. Y'all, it was, the darkest presence I've ever felt. It felt not human, okay? Whatever was standing behind me was not a person. I thought it was, but it wasn't. The longer I sat there and realized that it was not a person. So I'm laying there, and I usually have the covers up to my neck, but this night I did not. I was slacking a little bit, and my neck was exposed. It was this side of my neck right here. It was exposed, and I felt something touch my neck. It was so sharp. It touched my neck. Y'all, I literally thought something think of the sharpest object you can, and imagine it poking you in your neck. Like boop, like that. Or it happened fast but slow at the same time. It was like that. So I jump out of my bed. Excuse me. I turn around. Nobody's there, of course. And my bedroom door is closed. It was never open. It never got opened. So I jump up, and I go to the door, and I open the door, because at first I thought it was my brother, because I know he comes in there sometimes and snooping around and stuff, trying to find my phone charger, this, that, and the third. I know he does that a lot. So I thought that was him. So I walk across the hall, because my bedroom and his bedroom are adjacent from each other. So I walk across the hall. This man's asleep. Sound asleep. Mind you, he has a bunk bed. So he got to climb up the ladder to get in the bunk bed. And he would have been up there by now. He would have still been climbing the ladder. By the time I made it to the door, open my door, he would have still been climbing the ladder. And I would have heard his bed, because his bed's kind of squeaky. So I'm like, what the heck just ran in here and touched me? What was that? So, y'all, I went in my room, and I sat on my bed, and I cried, and I put on scriptures. I started looking up Google scriptures, reading the Bible, praying, everything on my knees, listening to sermons, playing gospel music. Girl, I was not playing. I said, whatever you are not welcome. Please get away from me right now. I don't play with type of games. I don't. Also, I'm gonna mention, when this happened, I was on my I done fell off a little bit, not gonna lie. But I was on my, journey with having a relationship with Jesus Christ, and y'all, I think something was in there, and they were trying to get me. I don't play like that. And then I had called my boyfriend because I was scared, but yeah, y'all, and I didn't go to bed till an hour or two later, and I was still scared when I went to bed. So I had my little sermons playing, scriptures playing in the background on my TV. Everything was playing, girl. I don't play them games, but that's my little ghost story.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
this hit so hard. Sometimes I feel like my whole life is a story that sounds completely unbelievable, but is also entirely true. However, I have a great one for this. I'm going to preface my ghost story by saying that I grew up in a cult called the Children of God. It's a fairly famous cult. Lots of people have done documentaries about it. It started in the 70s in California, and it was just awful. My parents were some of the leaders of this cult, which is truly a story for another time. However, because of that, I was born in the Philippines, I grew up in Japan and Europe and Africa, and I've seen some pretty wild things. However, there's one thing that stayed with me forever. And that is when I was about 13 years old, I think I just turned 13, my parents moved to a huge manor house in England. The cult had taken up residence. There was about 120 people living there, which can, kind of give you an idea of the scope of the place. It had a big pond/lake on the property, but it was huge. It was like a forest and just endless grounds, it seemed, especially to me as a child. There was also a caretaker who seemed ancient to me, but was probably only like 50 years old at the time that this all happened. And he had told us not to go to the pond lake thing, but I guess we ignored him, and I don't know if he ever really told us the reason. However, because of the madness that was my life and how I grew up, I had a lot of nightmares. In fact, real lucid nightmares, kind of lucid dreaming, where when I was a child, I could hardly distinguish reality from nightmare, to be honest. And by the time we got to this house, my nightmares were really bad. I would hear a woman screaming all the time in my dreams. I would sometimes see a woman in my dreams walking through the halls holding a candle. She would have wet hair and she would be screaming. Sometimes I was the woman screaming. Sometimes she was walking beside me. It was very terrifying. It would even happen to me when I was awake sometimes. And of course I told everybody, but no one believed me. The general consensus was that I had a demon and I needed desperate prayer, which was of course super helpful. Anyway, about 2 months after living in this place, my girlfriend and I were down in the basement getting wood because the whole house was heated by fireplaces. So we had to chop wood and we were bringing the wood up. And I think we were just hiding down there. I don't know. We had stayed a little longer than we should have. And as we were down there, it was a terrifying basement, lots of old paintings, and there was a 700-year-old staircase down there. It was just crazy stuff. Anyway, we're talking, and just out of the blue, out of nowhere, the basement just starts filling up with water, freezing cold water to about mid-calf. And we start to be able to see our breath. Also, I can hear that same screaming that's coming from my dreams. In fact, it was so vivid and clear that I thought, oh, I must be dreaming. That's why the basement is filling with water. Like, I'm lucid dreaming. That's what's happening. Like, this isn't real. But then I looked over at my girlfriend and she also heard the screams, which made us both start screaming. And we both just ran out of there and got out of there because it was so terrifying. Oh, also I could taste the water in my mouth. It tasted like mold and bog water and like old biscuits. And I remember talking to her too, and she could taste it as well. Anyway, we ran and we got out of there, and it speaks to the horror of our lives that we just kind of forgot about that whole incident and carried on living to the best of our ability. Anyway, a couple months later, or maybe half a year later, we were all down by the pond lake thing that we weren't supposed to go by, and we were skipping rocks and stuff, and I remember looking into the water, and first there was nothing, and then I started to see a woman underneath the water, and she had her eyes closed. She was clearly deceased. Her face was quite swollen and white, waterlogged. She was folding her hands across her chest. And as I stared at her, she opened her eyes and looked directly at me. And of course, because it was terrifying, I opened my mouth to scream, and something grabbed the front of my shirt and actually pulled me into the water. And I was flailing, and the water was filling my mouth and nose, and it tasted, of course, like the basement water. And I'm not sure who I was with. I think I was there with some of my younger brothers. I have 9 brothers and sisters, so it could have been anyone. And my friend who was down in the basement with me, she was there as well. They grabbed me. They managed to pull me out of the water. I coughed and I spluttered. And, no one believed me. I told everyone what happened, and no one believed me except for my friend who was, had already experienced the random basement flooding. Anyway, I carried on living my life. We moved away from the house. We moved all over. And yeah. About 15 years later, I've escaped from the cult at this point. I'm living my own life, and I'm working with a different charity. And I somehow find myself back at this manor with this charity that's using this manor house for something completely different now. And the caretaker, who was on the grounds when I was a little girl, is still there. And he's like, oh, hi, I remember you. And I was like, oh, I remember you too. Like, I used to live here when I was a little girl. And he says, I know you were one of the haunted. And I thought, what? That wasn't a dream? Like, I guess I had put it in the dream drawer of my mind or something and just thought that was too crazy to be real. But he told me, actually, his grandfather and his grandfather's grandfather, and they had been caretakers on this property for hundreds of years. And in his grandfather's lifetime, the last royal woman who owned that manor, her husband had died in a war, and she received the missive informing her of his death at night, where after she read it, she had a psychotic break and ended up wandering through the house in her nightgown, screaming and crying and wailing until she finally went and unalived herself in the pond lake thing. And he told me, I've always thought about you over the years. My grandfather told me she chooses different women to haunt. And I saw that you were haunted, and I wonder if you're okay. And I thought, oh my God, this is like a movie. Like, this is the craziest thing ever. And I thought, I'm medium okay, but oh, I can't believe you believe me. I said, no one's ever believed me. And he's like, oh, I believe you. That's it. That's my story.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I wanted to preface the story by saying that I grew up with a very spiritual mom. My mom has always believed in ghosts, spirits, paranormal things. In the past, she has used a board. I'm too scared to say these words, by the way. Well, I grew up with my mom taking me to psychics all my life. My mom, when I was a child, was told by several people that I had a gift, that I was born with a gift to see and feel beyond this realm. Essentially, that I had a clairvoyance and a sensitivity to energies. Mind you, this is a gift that I would gladly like to return. So anyway, needless to say that I have had several experiences from when I was a child, and so has my mom. Funny enough, all the women in my mom's side of the family, my younger sister, my 4 aunts, and my mom all have had some kind of experience of their own. Anyway, we lived in apartments growing up all my life. We would move from apartment to apartment several times, and the place that a lot of the activity happened at, we happened to live at for maybe 4 to 5 years. During this time period, I think I was between 13 to 16. When we first moved into this apartment, the neighbors that we had a few doors down that were already living there told us that there was a story of a little girl's presence that basically haunted the apartment complex. There was a pool in the back that was covered. It was filled with dirt or concrete, and the story was that a little girl drowned there. And I just also want to mention that these were not nice apartments. These were very old apartments. And yeah, another important thing to note is that I had an aunt that lived right next door. There was my apartment and she lived right next door. And I had a little cousin who at the time was around 6 years old. He had an imaginary friend who was a little girl whose name I shall not say because I don't want to bring that energy back. For some reason, most of the activity of the things that happened was in my mom's room. My room was directly across from my mom's room. There was a hallway in between, but they faced each other directly. There was a bathroom. This was upstairs. So there was a bathroom in between the 2 bedrooms, and that was the only bathroom upstairs. The other bathroom was downstairs. So this is an important part of the story. I was always terrified of my mom's room because at this point I had already had other experiences that centered around her room. For example, just a side story, there was this one time where I was taking care of my sister, and all of my family, all of my aunts were at my aunt's house next door. It was a party. It was maybe Thanksgiving or my aunt's birthday, which is also November, and they were all celebrating. And so because my sister was tired, I was tired, I brought her back to the apartment and put her to bed in my mom's room. And when I was looking in the mirror to take off my makeup or just look at myself, I noticed my shadow behind me moved. And so I told myself, okay, well, obviously it's my shadow, so if I move, it's gonna move. And something about it just scared me. Something about seeing the shadow like cast behind me scared me. I stopped just to see what would happen, and then the shadow grew taller and started to move across the room, and I'm starting to get chills. That's only one of the things that happened. There were also several things that happened to my mom in her own room. Anyway, that's not the story I'm telling, at least right now. Home alone very, very often because my mom worked all the time, and I didn't have a car at this time. I was maybe around 15, maybe 16, and I did have friends that had cars, but I did not have a car. So oftentimes I would lock myself in my room. At this stage, I was already very afraid of being alone. I was terrified of the dark, and I was terrified of ever leaving my room. I was terrified of my mom's room. I wouldn't leave my room just to avoid seeing my mom's room that was across the hall. So this means there was often times where I wouldn't eat and I wouldn't go to the restroom. And there was this one time where I just happened to be alone for a really long time. It got to the point where I had to go to the restroom. Part of the deal when I was alone, because my mom already knew how afraid I was to be there, was that she would always close her door, her bedroom door, when she left and turn off the light. If she didn't do this when she left, then I would muster up the courage to run across the hall, turn off her light and close the door, just because I didn't want to see any activity underneath the door. Like, I didn't want to see any light or shadow activity under her door. And this is really, really important. When I tell you I was paranoid about this, I was adamant about this, and I always, if I was alone, I made sure the door was closed and I think you know where this is going. This time that I was alone and I was in my room for majority of the day, it got to the point where I needed to leave the room and I needed to go to the restroom. And I just remember that I had peeked out of my bedroom before, trying to get the courage to go to make sure her door was closed, her light was off. It was. And so went back in my room, grabbed my phone, was talking myself up to go to the restroom. I just didn't want to see her room. And of course, when I go back out to walk to the restroom, I freeze because I look across and her light is on. Immediately, I retreat back to my room. I start talking to myself, telling myself maybe I mistook what I saw. But I knew in my gut, and I knew because I checked, that the light had been turned off and it had been off, and now it is on. I don't know how much time passed, at least another hour, that I just hid in my room. Instead of fight or flight, I froze. I just froze in place, and I was too scared to move. I started praying. I had a rosary I always had on me and just started praying. Well, eventually, because I knew my mom wasn't going to be home, nobody was going to be home. My aunt worked with my mom at the time, and so nobody was home next door. I knew that I was going to be alone for a few more hours. I eventually mustered up the courage again to, at the very least, I wanted to confirm that what I saw was true, and if somehow I was able to run to the restroom and then just come back, get that done. But then when I opened my door, I now see her doors slightly open. The light is still on and her door is slightly open. With this, I knew that I knew that something was happening. So once again, retreat back to my room. At this stage, I'm freaking out. Like, even talking about this, it freaks me out. Eventually, fast forwarding through the time, it felt like hours were passing. So the rooms were across from each other and the staircase was next to my room. So I thought maybe if I just am able to turn the corner and run down the stairs and leave the apartment, that's what I'll do. I'm just too scared to be here. And so I open the door again, and now her light is off again and the door is still open. And I just see a shadow, a short shadow, standing in the crack of the door. I freeze. I freeze. When I say I still get chills talking about this. I tried to tell myself maybe it's something hanging on the door, maybe it's this and that. I had checked after my mom was finally home. Nothing was hanging on the door, and nothing is in the view of the door. Like, you can't see anything from her bedroom from the view of the door. I don't know what that was, but I do. At this stage, I can't be at the apartment anymore. I'm frozen in fear, and I can't even get myself to run down the stairs. I go back in my room, and I call a friend of mine who had a car, and I tell her, you need to come pick me up. I'm scared, and I can't be here. We had a bad habit of always leaving our door unlocked because my aunt was next door, and just in case they were in and out of our apartment all the time, our door was always unlocked. So I tell my friend, the door's unlocked, come get me, go straight up to my room, come get me. So being a good friend, she comes, she goes up the stairs, I'm ready to go. First thing she says is, where did your sister go? Grab your sister. And I said, no, I'm alone. I'm not taking care of her today because I babysat very often. We can just go. Then she tells me the words that have haunted me to this day. She says, but I just heard her laughing. I heard her laughing while I was going up the stairs. Once again, this isn't the first thing and it's not the last thing that happened in that apartment. That apartment turned my stern, logical stepdad into a believer of things beyond.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, so to start this story, I'm going to say that I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains. So we're going to start with that. To save a whole lot of backstory and just give you a little bit so that way it makes sense. My parents were really young whenever I was born. I'm talking 14 and 16. And so for a chunk of my life, my grandparents took care of me. My mother moved into a trailer that was next door to her parents. I want to say at this point in time during the story, I was about 5. Could not have been older than 5. So that puts my parents at 19 and 21, okay? And the bedroom that was mine whenever I stayed there, it was essentially a glorified closet, okay? Dimensions, 7 foot wide, like when you stick your arms out, maybe 7 feet by like 10 feet deep, okay? Like a glorified closet, okay? So I had a small twin mattress in there, and then there's a little nook, or I guess nook, where I had a bookcase and a little light that you could flip on and off. That was my nightlight. So trailer was set up, walk in the door, living room, hallway, my room, and then a bathroom, and then their bedroom was in the back, okay? My dad's family had a nickname. Essentially, all the grandkids had nicknames. My nickname was Girly, okay? I feel like it was ironic because I was not girly. I was essentially a boy. I mean, I ran around with no shirt on. I played Hot Wheels. It was essentially just a sarcastic, ironic nickname. I was girly. So, my mother didn't call me that. Only my dad's family and my dad called me Girly. And that's a very key piece of information. My mother never called me Girly. She called me Tiff. So, one night, I'm at my parents' house, staying the night, and from the hallway, I hear my mother. She's like, Girly, Girly, in a whisper. And everybody recognizes their mom's voice, and so it wakes me up. Girly, Girly. But I don't see her. And I'm like, what? Because I'm a little kid, and you woke me up whispering, Girly, Girly. And I'm like, what? Nothing. She never comes to my room, doesn't say anything else, nothing. Girly, Girly. And I finally sit up, and I'm like, what? Because I'm a little kid that gets woke up at, I don't know what time it is. It's dark. It's past dark time, okay? So I sit up, and I'm like, what? And about this time, because my bedroom door's open. Now, mind you, I'm in a closet, okay? My bedroom is essentially a closet, so there's nowhere to go. This time, my mother stands in front of my doorway, and it's not my mother, okay? My mother has holes for eyes, okay? And it's her face, but her jaw is way open. Her mouth is way open, and there's no teeth in there. And my mother's kind of big. Like, she's always been kind of heavy, okay? And it has on her nightgown, the nightgown she had on, and I remember it because she had this nightgown for years. It was like a medium-colored blue, and it had little stars and moons all over it, okay? This thing had my mother's nightgown on, had her big upper body. We all have, the bat wings, so, bigger upper body. But this thing had like a little skinny toothpick. If you could imagine somebody that weighs like 90 pounds, how skinny their legs would be, but with somebody that weighed 250 pounds upper body. And I mean grotesquely skinny legs, like not just a thin person, but bone with flesh wrapped around it for legs and feet. And that's not how my mom is built. She's got her upper body and lower body match. She's big up top, big on the bottom, okay? And whatever this thing is standing in my doorway has my mother's face, but there's 2 black holes for eyes, a gaping open mouth with no teeth in there, and bones for legs, and it's standing in my doorway of a 5-year-old me, not saying anything, but not coming in. And I'm petrified. I can't move. I don't know if I breathed. It felt like eternity, okay? But it was realistically maybe only 2 or 3 seconds. And then it turns, and it walks towards the living room, and I can hear it walking in the same pattern my mother walks, okay? And then I don't hear it anymore. But it doesn't sound like it went anywhere. It sounds like it took maybe 10 steps, which would be just enough to get into the living room out of the hallway. And I don't hear anything else. And I'm terrified. Like, I'm shaking. I'm terrified. And I start going, like I'm trying to yell for my mom, but I can't make my volume happen, okay? And so finally I yell, "Mama!" And then I hear her coming from her bedroom down the hallway. And now I'm terrified because I'm thinking, what if this thing gets my mother, you know? And she comes in the room and she's like, "What?" And I was like, "You was calling for me." And I couldn't tell her what had happened. I'm crying because by the time I see my real mom, she's wearing the nightgown thing, you know, that the thing had copied, but it's actually my mom at this point. She comes in my room and I'm like, "You were calling, like you were hollering for me." And she was like, "We're asleep. Like, I was not hollering for you." And I'm crying at this point. I can't even tell her what's wrong. I want my mom, you know, I mean, I'm 5. So she gets in the bed with me. And she was startled enough that she had put my ball bat by the bed. So that's how scared, you know, I guess I scared her that bad. Because she's 19 at the time, too, you know. And so she sleeps in there with me that night. And time goes by, okay? This is a decade later. Actually, more than a decade. This is like 13 years later. There's a big age gap between me and my baby sister. We're almost 11 years apart, okay? She's a young child. I never told her the story about what happened. I never told her about this. I never even really told our mother what happened, like fully. So my little sister, near the same age, she couldn't have been older than 7, okay? And she doesn't tell me this story either until she's almost an adult, okay? But the way she recounts to me is she's no older than 7, or she could be younger, okay? She's laying in this is a different house, okay? So not even the same house, same street, different house. She's in our mother's room that she shares with her dad, okay? My sister's dad. And what's the details? She wakes up, I believe, and laying in the bed with her is essentially the same thing I saw. It looked like our mother, had 2 holes, and almost like our mother's face, but it was not our mother, okay? And so my sister's like freaking out, backing off the bed, crying for her dad to come, because the thing that's our mother is not our mother's in the bed with her. And then she said it's like it goes away, and you know what I mean? Like it's gone. But they had chalked it up to essentially, oh, she just woke up and was confused. But when she told me that, I was like, no, I know exactly what you've seen because I've seen the exact same thing. And I think it's absolutely bananas that we never told each other the story, and we've seen essentially the same thing over 10 years apart in 2 different houses. And can't get any explanation of why or how or what it was. What I think it is I think our mom essentially just has such negative energy attached to her that's just a manifestation of the negative energy that's attached to her. And we've seen it.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, so before I get started, I want to just say that, you know, as Indigenous people, we're not really supposed to talk about these types of things. And that's because a lot of these types of things involve our spiritual beliefs, our ceremonies, and those things are closed. A lot of those are closed practices, and we're not supposed to talk about it. However, when this particular thing happened, I was not living. I just moved from Arizona to the state of Michigan. So I was far away from my traditional homelands, and it has nothing to do with our spiritual beliefs or practices or anything really relatively indigenous, really. So I'm going to go ahead and say it because it's a good story. So at the time, I was living in Alma, Michigan. My mom had decided to move back to Arizona, and I wanted to finish out high school in the same school that I was currently in, and didn't want to switch mid-semester or nothing like that. So I actually moved in with my sister and her boyfriend, who had their own duplex at the time. So when we were unboxing some boxes of mine, we had stumbled across a box that had my name on it. And when we unboxed this box, we found a Nintendo 64, which isn't all that weird, except I don't have a Nintendo 64. I've never owned a Nintendo 64 in my life. So that was kind of weird, but whatever. We got excited. We found a Nintendo 64. Apparently it was mine, so we hooked it up and my sister and I decided to play it. So one night we're playing the Nintendo 64. It's relatively late. It's probably around 12 o'clock. And my sister decided that she's going to go to bed, and so I decided to stay up late and play the game by myself. So she leaves, and I'm playing the game by myself at this point. All the lights were off, and the only source of light in this whole duplex was the TV. And it was a small TV, and it maybe only casted enough light for like 10 feet. And where I was sitting in the living room, directly across from me was the dining room. So I could really only see directly in front of the TV, and that's from the light, and that's really about it. But I'm playing the game, and suddenly I remember after she'd gone to bed, I heard a sound. It caught me off guard, so I didn't know what it was, but it sounded like a shuffling sound. And it was definitely coming from the dining room. The problem is I can't see anything over there because the only light I have is my TV. So I don't know what it is. It just sounds like something moving in there. And my first thought was that it was a mouse. So I kind of like ignored it. I did stop and turn and look, but I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. So we went back to playing my game as if nothing happened. Soon after that, I heard it a second time. Now, the second time I heard it, I definitely was paying more attention to it. And it sounded like a shuffling sound, just closer. Like whatever it was like closer than it was the first time. So like the first time, I stop and I turn, I pause the game, I stop and I turn, I look. I don't see anything moving over there, and I don't hear anything else. But at this point, I'm like acutely aware that something weird is going on over here. But my thought is it has to be a mouse or something. I don't know. I didn't want to pay it no mind because honestly, I didn't want to deal with the mouse. So I just kind of went back to playing my game. So I'm playing my game, and then I heard it a third time. Now, the third time I heard it, it was so incredibly close that I was fully convinced that I would turn and I would actually physically see it standing there or on the ground or something. I pause the game, I stop and I look, and again, I see absolutely nothing. Just a sheet of black right here. Nothing's over there. I hear nothing. But it's definitely a shuffling sound, but more so, it sounds like something's being dragged. And at this point, I remember telling myself that if I hear this again, I'm gonna have to deal with this. Like, I don't want to deal with this mouse or this rat or whatever it is, but I'm going to have to deal with it. So if it happens again, I'm going to get up, I'm going to go directly to the TV and turn on the light that's going to light up the dining room, and I'm going to be able to see what this is. Knowing for sure that that's exactly what's going to happen. So I go back and I kind of brace myself. I go back to playing my game, and I commit to myself, I'm going to hit that light when I hear it again. And sure enough, as I'm playing the game, I heard it again. Closer than ever. And at this point, I don't even turn and look. I just immediately stand up and I head directly to the TV and I turn on the light. And after I turn on the light, I remember turn and I look, and I don't quite understand like what it is I'm looking at. But one of the things about my dining room was that we didn't really have anything in there. We did have a table, but we pushed the table all the way up against the wall, and under the table we had a basket. And this basket had all of our board games. We had cards, we had Monopoly, we had table tennis, all underneath the table. And as I turn and I look, there should be nothing there, but I turn and I look, and I see that basket sitting directly in the center of the floor. And it dawns on me that what I must have been hearing was shuffling, and it was dragging, and it was the sound of that basket moving across the floor. It's sitting in the middle of the floor. And so I'm staring at it, kind of trying to figure out why it's there. And it takes me a second before I realize that not only is it sitting in the middle of the floor, but there's a ping pong ball that is about a foot to maybe 2 feet in the air, just suspended in the air directly above it. And I'm not afraid. I don't freak out. I'm just more realistically trying to figure out, I'm trying to rationally understand what's physically going on that's causing this. I wasn't thinking anything spooky or nothing like that. I'm just trying to figure it out. But I'm seeing this ping pong ball in the air, and it wasn't until it started to move that I realized that what I'm looking at was not natural. But I'm looking at it and the ball moves and then just drops onto the ground. And it taps on the ground like a ping pong ball would, and it goes around the basket once and then comes to a stop against the wall. And I kind of sit there for probably maybe 20 seconds in dead silence. Not because I was frozen in fear. Like I said, I was just more or less trying to figure out what just happened. And I was kind of so much doubting it that I actually called out for my sister and asked if she heard what just happened. And it wasn't until she responded back with, yes, that was a ping pong ball, right? That it all clicked that this was absolutely real. What I just saw really just happened. And that's something that to this day, I don't have any explanation for whatsoever. But not only that, but how does that happen, first and foremost? But secondly, I don't know if the Nintendo 64 has anything to do with it. It sounds silly, but I don't know, because I don't know where that came from. I never owned one. I never had one. I don't know how I got one, but I got rid of everything at the end of the day, and it never happened again. But definitely something that is hard for people to understand when I tell them. So.
The year's 2019. I had just got married, the day prior. I'm headed to my honeymoon with my husband. We're in Middle Tennessee and we're traveling down to Florida, so we go through Alabama. And we made a stop in Alabama to get food or gas or something, who knows. And we're just trying to get back to the interstate at this point in time. So I'm on my phone trying to navigate him which way to go. And I remember we couldn't head left for some reason. So I told him hey, just head right. So he is turning to go right. And it's this smaller road. It's not connected to the interstate. It's a roundabout to get back to the interstate. But we just turned, and first thing we saw in the middle of the road is this black dog who's cowering. It looks mad. It is snarling at us. It is almost foaming at the mouth with just spit. It was angry. It was mad. But we're fuck it, we have no choice, we have to go down this road. So we just wait for this little dog to pass, and I remember making a comment to my husband oh, I didn't like that. That doesn't feel good, right? So dog aside, I'm a little creeped out, but it's nothing major. It's just a weird dog. But when we're heading down this road, it just starts feeling heavy. Something feels wrong, something feels off. And I'm trying to keep my cool, whatever, I'm just trying to get out of here. But we keep going, and I think at this point I had already turned the radio down because I was getting a little freaked out, but I felt I kept hearing something. So I turned all the volume off. I was okay, be quiet for a second. It sounded like a girl was singing or screaming. Could not make it out for the life of me, but it definitely added to the oh fuck, I'm freaked out, right? So at this point I can't keep cool. I'm telling my husband, I'm babe, I'm really freaking out. We gotta get out. This goes on for, I don't know, it feels 5 or 10 minutes, but I had this feeling in my gut where I was you need to text someone. You need to let them know where you are. Something's gonna happen here. Something's not right. Text someone. And I think I was messaging my brother on Snapchat so he could see me moving on the map. He knew exactly where I was. I was snapping him every 30 seconds or something. And I was just texting him hey, I'm in this weird part of Alabama. Don't feel great about it. I'm just texting you so you have my location. Just please keep your phone open in case I need someone. No sooner than that, put my phone down. And it's getting a little bit darker. It's not fully dark yet, but I get this feeling in my heart, my body, everything about me was something is wrong. Put my phone down after I'm texting my brother. Look to my right. And on this, I have fucking chills. On this side of the road, there's a church. And now, like I said, it's not even dark, but this church looks lit up. It looks like there are lights just on this church. There's a little outhouse beside the church and a graveyard. And I don't know what it is. But I look at my husband get me the fuck out of here. Get me out of here right now. This is not okay. I'm scared. The most dread, true dread I have felt from nothing happening to me. The feeling was tangible. But long story short, we get out of there. We're fine. I remember in the car, like, Googling things about this place in Alabama just to see, like, what the crime rates were, like, if other people had felt this, whatever. But honeymoon ends, we go back home, and I'm telling one of my friends about this experience. I'm like, this was the weirdest thing I've ever felt. Like, I've never been so scared just from looking at a church before, whatever. And I remember what area we're in. I remember what the church looked like and everything. So my friend's like, oh, I want to look it up. She goes and types it in, like, where I was in Alabama and this church. And she's looking at me and she goes, is this the church? She shows me her phone. I'm like, yeah, that's the church. Like, that is crazy. That's so weird. Like, I remember feeling chills just looking at that photo of the church. And she stares at me for a little bit. She's like, Tori, that church burned down in 2015. It burned all the way down in 2015. 4 years prior to me seeing it.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first. When I was 8.
So I was babysitting for the first time this little girl. She's 3 years old. And it was going to be at night because her mom works nights. So I'd be with her till like 2 a.m. And her mom told me, she's not sleeping lately. I don't know what's going on. She won't go in her room. She won't lay down. Whatever you need to do to get her to sleep, just try. I said, all right, we'll figure it out. So it was late and there was no sign of her wanting to go in her room. I said, let's go lay down in your room. You know, it was 11. I think 11:30. So let's go lay down in your room. She goes, no. I said, why? And she goes, the baby's crying. And I said, I have no idea. You know, I didn't think anything of it. I thought maybe it was like a TV show she was talking about. And I said, no, let's go lay down in your room. So we went in her room and she goes, the baby's crying. And so at this point, I'm like, what baby? What baby? And she pointed up to the ceiling, at the corner of the ceiling, and she said, right there. He's crying. He's sad. She said, I don't want him to cry. And I was like, I am freaked out. So, first thing that happened. And I said, okay, let's leave. Let's go to your mom's room. So we went to her mom's room. And she said, the tall man's in here. And I, full body goosebumps. I said, what tall man? Where? And she pointed to her closet and she goes, he lives there. Tall man. And I said, we're not staying in here. We're going into the living room. So we sat down in the living room and there's a couch. Behind me is a big window. So I think I had the news on. I don't know what I was watching. She's sitting there and she stood up and looked behind me and screamed. She screamed. And I was so like, I like thought someone was outside. So I looked. I swear to God, I saw the tallest shadow. It was like a shadow figure, tall. And it looked like it just swooped past the window. And it looked like he was wearing a wide-brimmed hat. And I was so freaked out. And she said, Hat Man, as soon as it happened. Hat Man, Hat Man, Hat. And my instinct is to run outside, but I went outside, so I didn't run outside. And so I honestly think I just stayed in the kitchen. I was like in the kitchen. And I was like, your mom's gonna be home soon. I'm just gonna stay here, okay? And the mom got home and I was like, yeah, she's not sleeping. I gotta go. I was so scared. So scared. I never went back. They never asked me to come back. I never went back, and they moved shortly after. We lost contact, so I don't know how they're doing. I hope they're okay. But that was the scariest thing that ever happened to me. Talking about it now gives me tears in my eyes because it just freaks me out so bad.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I've been trying to stitch this all day and it hasn't been working, so let's see if this works. I've had paranormal experiences since I was a preteen. This particular story I'm going to share is the most physical thing that's ever happened to me, and there was a witness, and I also have photographic evidence, but I don't think I can show it on TikTok because there's blood. My freshman year, when I was 18, I lived on campus with my best friend. We were roommates. My bed was against one wall and her bed was against the other wall, and they were raised beds, so there was storage underneath. It wasn't as high as a bunk bed, but it was still high enough. If we were standing, it was like at our chests. We had to hop up onto the bed. We also had a mini fridge, equally distanced between our two beds, that we kind of used as a bedside table. I had been going through a period of having sleep paralysis and nightmares. One particular night, I was lying on my right side and my back was to the wall, so I was facing the room. I was stirred awake to the sensation of my sheet, I just got the chills, slowly being moved. And the next thing I know, I wake up to the dead weight of my head slamming the mini fridge bedside table, and I fell on the floor. I immediately jumped in my roommate's bed screaming, "Help me, help me." Like my ear was ringing. She was like, "What happened?" I was like, "I don't know. I think I rolled out of bed." I did not roll out of bed. I'm now 26. I have never slept walk. I've never fallen out of bed ever except for this one time. The angle that I fell, my head hit the table right here. So I had a gash behind my ear that was bleeding. Because I was laying on my right side and landed on my right side, I think I was tugged out of bed, because if I had rollen out of bed, I would have landed face down.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first. When I was 8.
So I was probably either in like 5th or 6th grade. My mother has always been like super Catholic, so you know, it was Sunday, we were at church. It was normal for us to be at church every Sunday. And it was around Easter time. I know that because they were giving out, it was Palm Sunday, so they were giving out palms. And I remember the beginning of Mass, the priest was blessing us. Like, so he was like spraying holy water on each aisle. I forget what he uses to like spray each aisle. It's like, I know he dips it in the holy water and then he just sprays people with it. So he was doing that, and there was this lady sitting in front of me and my mom and my sister. The lady had to be like around like 60. She was probably in her late 50s. I know she was an older lady, and she was very petite. So as soon as she got hit with like the holy water, my God, she started like bugging. She literally started making these noises that weren't human. It just didn't sound human to me. It sounded like something from a horror movie. Like, and she was speaking in this language that wasn't like English. It was like a different. I have no idea what language it was. But I know that she just looked like crazy. She looked like mad, like it looked like something was in her that was making her do these things, right? So the priest started going towards the altar when he heard her, and he's at the altar, and she comes out of the aisle and she starts running. Like, when I tell you running, like running towards the altar, and it almost looked like a wall was between the altar and, like, if you guys know, the altar normally has like, there's steps to get to the altar, so there was like, it almost looked like a wall that was like blocking the altar from, like, you know, where we were sitting, because every time she would go, she would like fall to the ground. And she must have repeated this like 3 times, and she was like grabbing her, like trying to grab the priest, and like, but she just couldn't get to him. She literally could not get to him. And then the ushers came like running, and like they tried to like pin her down, like to try to control her and like relax her. Like, she was like just losing it. And the priest started praying, and then my mom got up from the chair, and she started like, she had her rosary in her hand, and she just started praying like loud, like super loud. Me and my sister were looking at each other like, what the fuck? Like, we're so scared. I literally started crying. I was so scared. Everybody around us, everybody that was there, people were praying, people were crying, people were like like leaving the church because they were scared. Like it was just, and it was so silent, like it was so quiet, like it just was so scary. And I remember they told us that we all had to leave, like, because I guess, I don't know if they were gonna perform like an exorcism or something, but the priest like told everybody that they had to go, and she stood behind. So I really, like, that was like the first experience I ever had with like visually seeing something like that. I've always seen it like in movies and stuff like that, but never like in real life. And it was just so scary to me. I just remember going home. I could barely sleep at night. I slept with my mom. I could not do it. I was so scared. So again, this happened to me when I was in 5th or 6th grade. Fast forward, in high school, and I meet this girl that she's in my class, and she's I'm a sophomore and she's a senior, and she was able to like smoke in her house, in her room, and she had invited us to do that. During that time I had just gone into like smoking, so I was like, yeah, whatever, we'll go to your house to smoke. So it was 2015. Back then, you know, it wasn't like legal like how it is now. So whatever, we go, and we're in her room, and me, my sister, her, and my other friend, and we're smoking, whatever. And I noticed that I've been noticed that the girl was super into like horoscopes and stuff like that. I never really paid mind to it. I thought it was like normal. I started getting into it too because I thought it was interesting. But she just was, that was like all she ever talked about. So it's like whatever. So she tells me how like her mom has always been like into like Santeria. Santeria, that's in Spanish. It's almost it's white magic. It's when people practice like white magic. So it's not bad, but I don't know. Honestly, I don't think it's that great. But whatever. She told me that her mom's always been into that and whatever. And I'm like, okay. So I go to the bathroom, and she's like, oh yeah, the bathroom's all the way at the end of the hallway. It's the last door before my mom's bedroom. So I'm like, okay, whatever, I'm going to the bathroom. And as soon as I'm like about to open the door to the bathroom, her mom's room's door opens. And I like look, and it's the same lady from the church that when I was like in 5th or 6th grade. That started bugging. I almost shit myself. I was so scared. I like looked at her, and she looked at me, and I don't think she recognized me. I really don't think so, because she just looked at me like normal, and she was like, hi, you need to use the bathroom? I was like, yeah. And she was like, oh, okay, no. So I like go to the bathroom real quick. I like send my sister a text while I'm in there. I'm like, we gotta fucking go now. So I come back into my friend's room, and then I like make up an excuse like, oh, my mom is looking for me and we have to go. So we leave, and I literally never went back there. I was so scared. It was just so crazy, like seeing everything, like she was like, she had like the cards, like the I don't know what those cards are called, but I know that a lot of like people be reading those cards and stuff that tell you about like your future. I'm like blanking out on the names, but like to see that they were so into all those things, it's like scary. Like, so I don't know, like that's my story.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I live in Oregon, and a friend of mine was having her bachelorette party at a cabin in the woods at the base of a very well-known mountain. I was looking forward to going. A lot of people I care about were going to be on that trip, and I thought it sounded like a really fun weekend just to get away and be in nature. And the first thing that happened when I left my house and I was just on the outskirts of town, I got such a strong feeling to turn around and grab some cleansing tools like sage, Palo Santo, whatever I had on hand. And it was so strong, I turned the car around, went home. My husband's like, what are you doing here? I said, oh, I don't know. I just had to use the bathroom and I don't want to use the gas station. totally fed him a line because I didn't want him to get worried. It was a really pleasant drive up there, a couple of hours. You're at least in the forest for, I'd say, 45 to 50 minutes before you find this house. This house. As soon as I pull up into the garage, I immediately just have this overwhelmingly heavy feeling that I really can't explain. 2 other people had arrived. They were there taking care of a lot of the organizational details. And I walked in, and my 2 friends are standing in the kitchen here and here. These are pictures of the property. And I walk in, and automatically, just with my sensitivities, I am like, there is something up there that is funky, and I don't like it, and I don't want to go near it. I feel like I am being stared at, and it is highly dark, highly uncomfortable. And so my 2 friends in the kitchen are like, hey Meg, how's it going? We're glad you're here. I'm like, yeah, how are you guys doing? They're like, we're great. And I'm like, yeah. Other than the thing that's up those stairs that's been staring at you the whole time. And they were like, oh my God, we were waiting for you to get here because we just had such a weird feeling and we're freaked out and we wanted to know what you thought, because they know I've got like sensitivities or whatever. I walked up the stairs and I got to about this spot right here, and I stopped because I literally felt like an energetic wall, like, do not go any further. My friends said, that's really weird. That's literally as far as we went to before you got here. And we were, they were just checking out the house, and they went up into that weird little loft attic area, and they were like, nope, no further. This is the top of the stairs right here. And if you look way down in this loft area, there's a little door with a crawl space, and it was shut when we got there. As people started arriving, we were having fun joking, and one of the women went up there, and we were talking about how creepy it was, and she said, was the door open when you guys went up there? The crawl space door had been opened, and none of us had been up there. So that night, we're just kind of settling into the house, settling into the weekend, trying to figure out what's on the agenda, trying to have a good time. But if you're sensitive, you can just tell from these pictures, the place just had a creepy vibe. Those 2 same friends are sleeping in this room, and I am sleeping down here, downstairs, alone on a pull-out couch. First thing we notice is the incredible amount of dead insects all over the floor and even in the sheets. That night, one of my friends had her electronics go crazy at 3 a.m. I felt such a heavy layer of darkness. The first night I tried to go to sleep downstairs here on that pull-out couch, I felt like things were staring at me, circling me. I was this close to getting up and leaving in the middle of the night with a 2-hour drive home, rolling in at 5 a.m. with my husband, like, what are you doing? But I got this very clear message: you need to stay, and you need to help hold up some kind of energetic barrier. I had a dream when I eventually fell asleep that the entire property was surrounded by fire, and the fire couldn't penetrate this weird line that we were all trying to hold. So I was like, fine, okay, I guess I will stay in this freaky ass house. The next morning, we're all hanging out on the balcony and talking, having breakfast, having coffee, and people start to share their experiences. People were touched. People staying in the upstairs bedroom in the bunk beds had water dripped onto their faces, coming out of nowhere, and there were no leaks in the ceiling. It wasn't raining that weekend. Later that day, when most of the crew was playing yard games, like down here in the grass, one of the women was hanging out over here, and there was a deck of cards that literally got blown, and the cards were like flung into her face. I have no idea how that happened. At this point, I am getting so drained physically and feeling so sick, I need to go lie down. I'm alone in the house again, but I'm watching everybody from outside these windows where I'm at. Gosh, I can't point. And at this point, I'm just praying. Like, I'm here for a reason. These are people that I really care about and love, and I do not want to leave them here because I feel like I can be more helpful trying to hold off whatever this thing is. I did eventually run out to the corner store to test and make sure that the physical symptoms I was experiencing were really tied to the house and not just something going on with me. And as soon as I left the house, I felt so much better. But I had to come back. People were having personality changes while at the house. Like, they would start to withdraw, go take a shower, try and like snap out of it because they just felt something come over them. What I was picking up on primarily that kind of like lived in that upstairs loft area was something that was not nor had ever been human. This sounds really crazy because I've had run-ins with some really, really dark, start with a D word kind of entities. This wasn't even that. It almost felt like not from here, if you catch my drift. But it was, what I saw in my mind's eye was almost like a spidery looking thing. And it's interesting because another woman who was there told me that they saw that a spidery looking image of this big nasty thing like crawl from up in this main area down the stairs into the loft area where we were sleeping. And what's odd is that the safe places in the house would change depending on the time of day. It's like the rooms would just start to feel off. Another person said they were almost picking up on the presence of a man, like an older man. I wasn't picking up on a person, dead or alive, definitely a thing. The second night, one of my friends and I were just so uncomfortable about the idea of going to sleep that we just stayed up kind of deliriously talking to each other until, God, it must have been close to 4 a.m. just to not be asleep and unconscious in that environment. What's so weird and actually kind of miraculous if you think about it is that the bride was not affected. She was the only one out of all of us who had no idea what was going on because she was in her soon-to-be-wed splendor. And also, this particular person has an incredible amount of spiritual protection around her. So we were all really grateful for that, and we'd kind of like whisper about what happened to you last night and this happened to me in the bathroom earlier, and we were all just kind of keeping it out of the realm of awareness of the bride, fortunately. By the last morning, I'll never forget, one of my friends had set up a beautiful create-your-own crepe kind of buffet line, and we were all sitting down around at breakfast, trying to eat, and just feeling so uncomfortable, ready to get the heck out of there. Someone said, "So, you picking up on anything, Megan?" And it's interesting because at that moment, I felt just this overwhelming cloud, almost like darkness from every angle just starting to swoop in, and I said, I think it's time to go. The way everybody collectively pushed back from this table and popped up and got up and grabbed their stuff and started hauling ass out of there, it was like a scene in a movie. Other guests had weird experiences. I checked the book, paused to read. If anybody knows who this was, I would love to talk to you about your experience. This one's a little weird. I think some dude had a freaky experience and then leaned into the weirdness and hopefully just exaggerated because they didn't know what to make of it. We all stood outside of that house and we held hands in a circle, and I kind of led everybody through a grounding and protective and clearing exercise because it was so vile. The husband-to-be was actually having his stag party down the road, and they came over because they heard whispers and rumors about what was happening to us that weekend, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna run in and we're gonna take care of it." When they saw the look on our faces and they heard me say absolutely nobody's going into that house, they decided not to go in. I got in my car and was completely silent and white-knuckled my grip on the steering wheel until the tree line broke about an hour later and I was getting closer to home. I burst into tears and started sobbing. Because up until that point, I had never faced anything that dark or malevolent in my life. A few of us called each other after to process what had happened. It was wild.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
My freshman year of college, the weekend before Halloween, me and my girlfriends all went to this house party that a fraternity was hosting. And we hung out with this fraternity a lot. We were friends with a handful of the members. So we went, and it was going to be this big rager. But one of our friends, who was a member of the fraternity, fell into the speaker and broke it. And so there was no music, and it was just really lame. So me and one of my girlfriends I came with, and then one of the brothers named Scott, we'll call him for this story, that's not his real name. The three of us are talking, and we decide to go back to Scott's house and we'll just hang out there and have a chilled night. Whatever, no big deal. Now, I want to also add context and say that the neighborhood that this all takes place in is full of older homes built starting in the early 1900s to like the 1950s. And a lot of students live in this neighborhood because it's very walkable to get to campus and to the bars downtown. So it's a pretty popular place for students to live, and the homes are a lot older. Now, me and my girlfriend both had been to Scott's house before a handful of times. We had been for pre-games, we had been for parties. We were familiar with the home. And I've always had spicy senses, like towards the paranormal. And so a few times when I would be in this house, my ears would pop like I was on an airplane, which when that happens to me, that usually means that there's some other vibe, energy going on, not in the physical realm. And I just figure this is an older house. It's probably someone who used to live here, whatever. Me, Scott, and my gal pal, we're hanging out. It's getting later. And a guy texts my girlfriend who was with us. She leaves. So then it's just me and Scott hanging out in the living room downstairs. And I haven't seen any other roommates at this point. Like, it doesn't seem like anyone else is really home besides me and Scott. So we hang out some more, and it starts to get really late, like probably close to like 2:30 in the morning. And in our college town, it's relatively small, and there were no more Ubers running to take me home to my dorm. So Scott offers that I can stay in his bedroom and he'll stay down on the couch, and I don't have to go home. I can wait and go home tomorrow, and I don't have to like walk home in the dark by myself or whatever. So I'm like, sweet, I'll stay up in your room. Not knowing at the time that this man never slept in his room. And I'll get into that in a little bit. So Scott walks me up the stairs of their house. And when you get to the top of their stairs, there's a long hallway running like perpendicular to the stairs. And there's a bedroom door on either end of the hallway. And then there's doors off the sides of the hallway. And Scott's bedroom was here. It was at the end of the hallway, and his bedroom door looked out and was directly opposite this bedroom door. Hopefully that makes sense. Scott makes sure I'm situated. I take off my shoes. I put them at the foot of the bed. He's like, let me know if you need anything. I'll be downstairs. And he shuts the door and goes downstairs, and I'm alone in this room trying to fall asleep. I left the lamp on because I started to feel kind of strange. Couldn't put my finger on what it was. And I don't remember specifically falling asleep, but all of a sudden I am conscious, but I'm very disoriented. I don't feel fully awake, but I feel like I am lucid, like I know what's going on. And to my shock and confusion, I'm standing at the opposite end of their upstairs hallway in this house. And I'm looking down the hallway into Scott's bedroom. I can see my body. I'm looking at my body. My hair is behind me. I'm laying on my side with my back to the bedroom door. I can see my outfit I had worn that night. I can see where I had set my shoes down by the bed and the lamp on. And then I see in the doorway, there is something standing there watching me sleep, looking at my body. I don't know what this thing was, and I do not want to know. I'm Catholic. I'm good. I don't need to know. But what I can say is that it was pretty much the same height of the door frame. It was very tall, and its body appeared to be muscular, but it was weird, lumpy muscular. And the best way I can describe it is it looked like the arms and legs and torso were made of tree roots or ropes that had been like twisted together to form a body. And then the head, I never saw this thing's face, but the head from behind looked like it had ram's horns, like on top of the head. I am filled with dread. I am realizing that I'm in danger, and all I want is to get around people. And I start to pray because this is the craziest nightmare I've ever had. I've never had a dream like this before or since. I start to pray and this thing starts to turn around. And I never saw its face because as soon as it starts to turn around, I sit up and I'm back in bed. And at this point, I have sweat through my clothes, but I'm freezing cold. I'm terrified. And the door that Scott had shut to his room was now wide open. I could see straight down the hallway to where I guess my soul had just been standing watching me sleep, watching me watch this thing. I don't really know. I grab my stuff and I run. I've never run that fast in my life. I ran barefoot by myself in the middle of the night. I rolled my foot, and I was so full of adrenaline, I didn't realize I had hurt my foot till the next day. I run to my dorm. Thankfully, my roommate and her boyfriend are there asleep. Climb in my bed, pull the covers over my head, spend the rest of the night praying, and I do not come out till I see the sun. I never tell anybody about this because I feel crazy. So flash forward, now I'm a sophomore, and me and two of my girlfriends are renting a house in this same neighborhood where the students live and the houses are old, in the same neighborhood as the creepy house. It's syllabus week, so it's in August, and one of the guys who used to live there and our friend who broke the speaker at the Halloween party, they text us that they're bored, and so they come over to hang out. And so the five of us are all sitting in this living room, catching up, talking. We haven't seen each other all summer. One of my roommates asks them, "Where are you guys living this year?" And asks the one guy in particular, "Are you still living in your old house?" And he was like, "No." And his face just changed and looked way more serious all of a sudden. And so I just threw it out there and I was like, yeah, that house was kind of creepy. Not elaborating, but it was very creepy. So he proceeds to tell me and my roommates about how haunted the house was and how when he was home alone, he would hear something use the voice of one of the other roommates and call his name, and he would go look for his roommate or his friend, and the house was empty and he was in it by himself. He also mentioned how random stuff would slam and they wouldn't be able to find where the slamming was coming from. But the part that freaked me out was he then tells this story about how on alumni weekend, him and his roommates are grilling on the back porch of this house. And this older gentleman, an alumni, breaks off from the group he's walking with on the street and comes over and stands in their backyard and introduces himself and says, "I used to live here." They ask him, "Do you want to come inside and see your old room?" And he goes, "No." And he also wouldn't stand on the back porch. And they talk, they shoot the breeze, and then the guy's friends call him back to his group, and he turns to leave and he says bye, and he looks at all of them standing on the back porch and goes, "By the way, don't F with the demon in the basement." I don't know what I saw, and I don't want to know. But that story is like so vivid in my mind still. And that's my ghost story. So there you go.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable, but is entirely true.
People that I know are definitely going to see this and it's going to be so embarrassing because I am going to cry and it's on the internet and that's so cringe and I know. But what I'm about to say is a completely true story. I'm going to change out some identifiable information because HIPAA. It involves a nursing story. So aside from like what happened, all the like details just, they're made up. Okay. So I was on orientation. I'm a new grad in the ICU. I am now off orientation, but this happened while I was on orientation. Anyway, so we have this guy, I'm going to call him Jason. He's a 40 to 60-year-old man. So like kind of young, has kids, married, whatever. Very, very sick. I had him for truly like the whole time that I was pretty much on orientation. And he, really sick, intubated, CRRT. I learned so much from him, which I will forever be grateful for. Truly learned so much. So thank you for that. Nearing the end of his stay, he all of a sudden turned this huge left corner, and I was like, oh my gosh, did I heal him? Woohoo! Got him extubated, got him off CRT. I got to hear his voice, got him sitting up on the edge of the bed. Like, it was, I think, one of the best days of my whole life. So that was earlier in the week, and had a couple days off. I was feeling so good. And I come back to work, and it was a night shift. And, you know, I'm like, I don't know, excited to see what new patient I was going to get, what else I was going to learn. And they say, hey, Bailey, and my preceptor, y'all got to get out on the floor. You have Jason back. And I was like, what? Because again, I'm on orientation. So like, I should be getting like, I was like, he's fixed. Like, what do we, I mean, like fixed for the ICU, but I was like, what do we mean? Like, why am I getting back? And they're like, oh, we're actually coding him. What? So we run down there, and sure enough, we're coding him. He's back on CRT, back to being intubated, and I am just devastated. Oh my God, was I devastated. So we walk in, and we just start working. It wasn't even, I guess it was like right at 7 p.m. We didn't get report, because again, I'd had this patient for weeks, and so I knew, I was like, but what happened? And it turns out it happened. It doesn't matter. Anyway, some other things happen. And we go in at 7 p.m. I don't walk out of that room until 3 a.m. Like 3 a.m. It was crazy. Blood, sweat, and tears. And 3 a.m. is whenever we came out. We're just like, there is nothing more. There is nothing more that we can do. And I was broken. Okay, so come out. 7:32 a.m. and Jason passes, and it was devastating. And and the ICU can just be like tough, and losing anybody is tough. This one has stick with me and will stick with me forever. And I promise I'm getting to the ghost story. I promise. Okay, so he passes, and I just want to stay to do postmortem care, because for me that's such like it gives me closure. I can get them all cleaned up and make sure that they're like as comfortable as possible. Like, it's just the last little bit that like I can do, and it helps me. Okay, but I can't because it was so sudden, and so we were giving family time to like come and blah blah blah. Okay, and I was coming back that night, so I couldn't just like stay. Like, I have to come back. I have to go to bed. I have to like be ready to go for the next day, which is so challenging. Okay, so that happens, and I am so not okay. I am so not okay, but I have to be okay because it's the ICU and I'm new and blah, 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 blah. Okay, so months goes by from that moment, and I mean, from that time on, I mean, it was weekly. It was turning into like an every other day situation, whether I was working or not. I was having panic attacks. I was having nightmares. I was physically so unwell. One particular night, I'm coming in for my shift. I'm off orientation. I'm on my own. I've been practicing on my own for a couple months at this point, and I just feel terrible. I'm still having panic attacks. Before this particular shift, I'm having a panic attack in the car in the parking lot of the hospital. And I was just sitting there, and I was like, I'm not strong enough. I can't do this. Maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I was kidding myself. Major imposter syndrome, but panic attack nonetheless. Shaking, crying, hysterical. And I thought, okay, just don't clock in and go quit. Like, if you really can't handle it, go quit. Walk up to the floor. I'm like, no, I've breathed, I've composed myself. Clock in. So I'm there. I'm getting my patients. Like, we're having a shift. And I go on and I get my patient assignment. Great assignment. We're chilling. This one patient that I got, I don't think we need a name for him. Anywho, he was there for alcohol withdrawal. Beginning stages, but beginning to hallucinate if you haven't worked with, or if you're unfamiliar with that. So they start to hallucinate. He was seeing people in the room. He was seeing things crawling on the wall, but like nothing scary, because sometimes they can be really scary and I feel really bad for that, but his were fine. And he was also very trusting of me. Like, he was like, hey, I've been through this before. I know I hallucinate. It helps me if you can help reorient me. Anytime you walk in the room, just, you know, I trust you. I know who you are. I was like, sweet. So we're going through the night. Everything's groovy. I'm able to get him off of hallucinations. He'll be like, this is there. And I'm like, and he's like, do you see that? And I'm like, no, like, I don't see that. Or, hey, I have a concern about this. And I would go check. And I'm like, no, like, I'm not seeing that. But do you feel safe? Are you okay? He's like, yep, I'm good. I trust you. Again, we're chilling. Several hours into the shift, all of a sudden I'm looking at the monitor, super tacky. He turns on his light, like from his bed or whatever. And I'm like, whoa, that's so strange. So I fly in the room. I'm like, maybe, you know, hallucinations getting to him. I'm like, hey, what's up? And he's agitated. Oh my God. He was so upset with me. And he was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, whoa. I was like, hey, like, what's up? I was like, because, you know, sometimes that happens and no big deal. We roll with it. And so I'm trying to help reorient him. And all of a sudden he goes, Jason's in the corner. Sir? Jason? I'm like, okay. Well, because I didn't think that up at first, but I go, who's Jason? And he goes, that guy that died in here. And goes on. He's like, this is where his spouse was. This is what you did. This is what you guys talked about. This is music that you played for him. This is what he liked to do. And he's in the corner and he wants to talk to you. And I'm so mad that you're not talking to him. So I hightail it out of that room. I'm like, oh my God, he's right. And he knew his name. And I'm like, what room am I in? I was in his room. In his room. So I run out of the room. I'm freaking out. And I'm like, no one's going to believe me. Everybody's gonna think I'm crazy, that I've like lost my mind. So I run up to my charge. I'm sobbing. She starts kind of getting emotional, and she's been a nurse for 25 years. So she was like, whoa, I've never heard anything like this. Anyway, I go back in the room and I was like, okay, what does Jason want to tell me? Because I can't see him. And he calmly tells me, again, I just had a panic attack. And the man in the bed that's hallucinating says, Jason's in the room, he's been in here, and he's wanted to talk to you all night, and he wanted to say that he has moved on, and that you need to too. And I hadn't moved on. I hadn't. Obviously. And I just started crying, and I just said, okay, and thank you. And he said, no, thank you. And I was like, oh, what did I do? And he said, no, that's what Jason wanted me to tell you. He wanted me to tell you thank you. And oh my God. Since then, I haven't had any panic attacks. I felt so much more confident in the ICU and in my skill. And I carry him with me everywhere. I think about him all the time, and his family, and just how beautiful of a person he was. But I truly learned so much from him. He was an amazing person that I just learned so much about how to be a nurse and how to care for people in really shitty situations. So, cheers to Jason. But yeah, that's my ghost story. My past patient haunting another patient to tell me that I needed to get my stuff together and move on. So anyway, that's my story. Thanks for listening.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So this actually happened to my husband back in 2016 or 2017, and I'll show you the photo at the end of what we captured that day. So we live in the Appalachian Mountains of Western North Carolina. We live in Swannanoa, North Carolina, which is close to Asheville, about 10 minutes. And my husband and his dad went fishing one day along this little trail that goes by the Swannanoa River. They were casting lines, fishing, whatever, walking along the trail, and they decided to pull off of the trail and stop and fish in a deeper part of the river. So my husband gets his line snagged on like a log or something in the river and has to jump in. So he has to take his clothes off, so he's in like his underwear, and his dad is like on the shore laughing, taking pictures of it. He takes 4 or so pictures back to back, like boom, 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 boom. And what they captured was crazy. So a little bit of backstory. It is May. It's like late May, so it's pretty hot. It's probably 80 something degrees. It's warm enough to get in the water without freezing. And it's a sunny day. There's nobody else really around. I mean, in their direct line of sight, you can see pretty far down the river. There's, rocks and woods and stuff on both sides. The trail is only on one side of the river, the side that they came from. The other side is just woods. So after he gets his line unsnagged, whatever, they continue their day, and he comes home later and is like, oh, look at these funny pictures of me. I had to, strip and get in the river. So we're scrolling through the pictures and we stop at the very last one. And I say, who is that? And we kind of zoom in to the picture and this is what we saw. So if you can see in the background, this man is just standing on the rock looking at them. And like I said, this guy is in their direct line of sight, and neither of them said that there was anybody else there. And also, this is the only photo that he showed up in. He wasn't in any of the other pictures that they took back to back. This is the only one. How crazy is that? So notice what he's wearing also. It's a hot day. He's wearing a long coat, looks like boots and a hat, and he has some kind of like cane or walking stick in his hand. The land that they are on is close to an agricultural college called Warren Wilson, and we don't know who this guy is, but maybe he's attached to the property that the school is on because it's a historical school. We don't know. We have shared this photo with all of our friends, and everybody says it's a ghost. What do you think?
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Hey guys, my stitches are like freaking broken. Whenever I try to stitch a video, I can hear a sound on their end, and then mine is just no sound. So I'm going to do this as best I can so I can get a video to you, because I've been seeing these stories for the last few days, and I want to tell you mine. I don't know what exactly I experienced that night. I don't know if it was a ghost, if it was a demon, or if it was just a really bad detailed dream. I lived alone in a new construction home, so there was no history tied to that home or to the land. I'm 46 years old now. This happened when I was around 26, and I still remember it like it was yesterday because it scared the hell out of me. Alright, here goes. I was 26, already a registered nurse, living in my first purchased home. Like I said, a new home, so there was nothing tied to that land. There was no like creepy stories about the area. I lived right down the road from all the rest of my family. I felt extremely safe. I always felt safe there. I had worked like 4 12-hour shifts in a row and came home just exhausted. Did what everybody else does, just took a shower, ate, headed to bed. Had a pretty medium-sized bedroom. My bed was, the head of the bed was against the wall in the middle of the bedroom. Beside that was a nightstand with a lamp on it, and then I always laid facing the wall, and I had a window, but the window wasn't creepy. It was always closed and with blinds, and always behind me would be just my dresser on the far wall and the door that I came into to enter the room. So crawled in bed, turned off the lights, and was out, exhausted. It was sometime during the night that I woke up, and normally waking up it would be dark. But this time it was almost like there was a TV behind me playing, and it was throwing light onto the wall in front of me. I was laying, of course, on my side facing the wall, and I could just see oranges and yellows and shadows, you know, just dancing along this wall. And I just laid there calmly looking at it because my brain hadn't caught up yet. And that's when I started hearing what sounded like loud crackling, like if you were at a big fireplace and you heard the wood in that fireplace just crackling because it was so hot. And I was like, shit, my house is on fire. And I tried to jump up. First thing you do,
jump up, flip over so I could look behind me, see what the hell is going on. I was paralyzed, completely paralyzed. I couldn't move an inch, and I'm telling you, I was trying to the point where it felt like my muscles were shaking, like every ounce of energy, just trying to just even turn my head. I could feel my neck, like it was almost like cramping from just me trying so hard to turn my head, completely paralyzed. As I was fighting like my own body, I began to notice other little details, like the fact that I didn't feel heat. I didn't feel any heat from this obvious fire behind me, and I did not smell any smoke, even though I could tell this crackling was my dresser, and the wall just engulfed in this hot flame that was just sounded like the loudest wood breaking. Then I felt a presence standing in that fire on the other side of the bed behind me. It was a human-like presence, except it only vaguely appeared human. That was the only thing that was human-like about it. But it was covered in it was very skeleton-like, and was covered in this black, burned skin that was just almost like the heated cellophane that you can heat and shrink. The skin was just shrunken to this thing's bones. It didn't have hair. It was just black smut, just something that looked like it had just been torched, but still had a little bit of a human look. Even his abdomen, the skin was just sunk to its backbone where there was no intestines. I couldn't turn and see this. I saw it all like in my own mind. This thing began to crawl on the bed behind me, towards me, and I could feel whenever the weight of it got on the bed, because my body fell back slightly, like somebody had sat down on the bed. And I remember trying my best to reach for the light, to try to turn a light on, but still I was completely paralyzed. And I felt this thing in my mind's eye, I could see it like slithering, crawling to my back. And the way I was laying, from my waist down, my legs were just like normal, like somebody laying on their side. But from my waist up, this thing began to crawl onto my back in between my shoulder blades. By doing that, it's twisted my top of my body like a pretzel, because the other bottom was so heavy, I mean, it couldn't move. It was paralyzed. And the top was being twisted into the pillow, and my face was going into the pillow, almost to where like I couldn't breathe. Its full weight was sitting high up on my back, like right into the middle of the shoulder blades, and I could feel it leaning forward, like it was trying to look into my face. And I remember thinking, don't let this thing look into your eyes. And I felt like that's what it was trying to do. Like it was trying to look inside my eyes for, I don't know if it was going to possess me, attack me, I don't know. But I just knew there was a message coming through my brain that said, don't let this thing look in your friggin' eyes. And you know, what do you do? What do you really do? I'm laying there twisted like a pretzel with like a thin, burned demon man sitting on my back, and my whole entire body is paralyzed, and it's trying to like look at me in the face, and I don't want to see its face. I don't want to see its face. I already can see what it looks like in my mind. I don't want to see the real thing. And my head is just shoved into the pillow. All I could do, it was almost like a natural instinct, is I started saying the Lord's Prayer. Now don't get me wrong, I'm a Southern Baptist. I love the Lord. I believe in the Lord. I love Jesus Christ. I do consider myself a Christian, but I'm not. At that time, I would never consider myself one to jump to spiritual, help like that, because I I didn't attend church regularly or do anything that like you would think a perfect Christian did. No lie. I got to the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And it was like I had been in a room that was completely black, and suddenly somebody put a flashlight right to my eye and turned it on the highest. Everything, I couldn't even see the walls anymore. I couldn't see any fire, light or anything. I couldn't see anything but this brilliant, like brightest white light you could ever imagine. And with that light, I felt like another presence in the room, but I did not feel like it was like Jesus or the Lord. I felt it was almost like a guardian or something. And I almost started like mocking this thing where I was terrified like 10 minutes ago. I had this strength that came, and it was like, who do you think you are? How dare you bother me? I'm a child of God. You can't do anything to me. And it felt like I laid there saying the Lord's Prayer in this bright light for a few seconds. And then just like that, everything was back to normal. I can remember my muscles being sore and just reaching up and turning the light on. And when I saw everything was back to normal, I had absolutely no fear. I turned the light back off and I went back to bed. I felt protected.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
My story happened when I was 17 years old, back when I was living at my aunt's house. And to this day, I don't like to think about that part of my life. It is very unsettling, scary, and ever since I started getting close to God, I just want to pretend that that part of my life did not happen. But here it is. I was 17 years old. I had a routine. Every single time I would get out of high school, I would come home, watch cartoons or watch Disney Channel, and then go to my room. Well, this day I arrived, and the way that the living room was set up was 2 single couches that were tilted together towards the TV. So every time that somebody was sitting in that couch, you could only see the side of them if you were passing through. I got home and I saw a figure, a person. I saw the side of them wearing beige pants and a white t-shirt. My aunt and my cousin at the time, they would invite people over all the time, so I didn't think nothing much of it. Like, I just thought that it was somebody that they invited. I went to the room because I'm like, they're watching TV, I'm just gonna go to the room. And I got curious, so I went to my aunt's room and I'm like, hey, did you invite somebody over, or are they waiting for Letty or what? And she goes, what do you mean Letty's not here? And I'm like, yeah, well, there's somebody in the living room. I don't know who they're waiting for, but they're in the living room. She goes, who's in the living room? What do they look like? And I'm like, they are wearing a white t-shirt and beige pants. So we both walk into the living room and that figure, person, whatever, is gone. They start asking me all these questions. My aunt arrives right after, and my mom arrives. They also start interrogating me, and I'm like, this is literally what I saw. I just saw the side of them. They were wearing a white t-shirt and beige pants. That's all I could remember. I didn't see nothing else. So finally, my cousin arrives, and she goes, what happened? And I tell her, I thought you were waiting for somebody. They were wearing this and this. And then she's like, wait. She's like, did that person look like this? And she shows me a picture of a person that was wearing the exact same outfit, white t-shirt and beige pants. And I'm like, yes, this is literally the person I saw. And she's like, that can't be possible because that person got shot yesterday. It's one of my friends. So then I'm like, what? And she goes, yep, it was very unexpected, but he passed away yesterday. Don't ask me why I saw that. I don't know what that person was doing there. I'm assuming that person was trying to say goodbye to my cousin. But the fact that I saw it clear as day was terrifying enough. At the time, my family believed that our ancestors cursed us with something, that for some reason I was able to see a lot of different things during that time, and it was nonstop. Like, I was seeing things constantly.
So that is why over the years I started getting close to God, because I was like, I'm tired of seeing things. I don't want to see things. I don't want to have this curse, gift, whatever it is. I don't want to have it. And a lot of these stories for a lot of you, they might seem like jokes or made up, but the fact that the trauma, you know, that it leaves behind is not. You know, a lot of people that are telling the stories can tell you it is unsettling, and you can't stop thinking about it over the years. That happened to me when I was 17, and I am now 30, and I still think about that story to this day.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
When I was about 23, I moved into this apartment, and I had a nighttime job. So I was taking a nap before I had to go into work. And I just remember, you know, I went to a deep sleep, and I remember hearing my grandmother call my name. And when she called my name, I was like, you know, I'm half asleep. I don't feel like waking up. Then she called my name again, really loudly. And then I realized, hold up, I'm in my apartment by myself. I realized where I was. And I jumped up, and I kid you not, I took the deepest, like, breathing the life back into me breath that I'd ever taken in my entire life. I have still yet to have that breath again. And I don't ever want to experience that again. It was almost like that breath, you know, when you watch those movies, when someone had drowned and was no longer breathing, and someone, you know, resuscitates them, and they take that, that shit. It was even louder than that, though, y'all. I really felt like I was sucking the life back into me. And in that moment, as I was sucking the breath back into my body, I looked in the doorway of my bedroom, because I was sleeping on the living room sofa, and I could see a tall, dark, cloaked figure standing in the doorway. And as I was taking my deep breath back in, it was disappearing. Me still not even registering what had happened, I called my grandmother to see, you know, was she okay? Because I had experienced other things in the past, and me hearing her call my name, I thought something was wrong with her. So I called her, and I told her what happened. And then that's when I realized it was me who was having the issue. And she told me, you know, you heard my voice because I'm always praying for you. Yeah. So that death cloaked figure thing, that thing is real. Okay? That thing is real.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first. When I was 8 years...
Okay, so this story takes place about 12 years ago, and I'm still not over it. I still get goosebumps every time I think about it, every time I talk about it. So, I was about 20 years old. I was 7 months pregnant, and my, at the time, boyfriend and I moved into an apartment together that had extra space for the baby. So, we got the baby's bedroom all set up. We got it all set up during the day. So, when I was still like 8 months pregnant, my nephew slept over, and he was almost a year old at the time. And he would sleep over at our old apartment a lot, and he always did just fine. He would not sleep. And we put him to bed in the baby's room, and he would not sleep. He was awake. He was upset. He was crying. And, you know, we would take him out and try to console him because it was so unlike him. But finally at like midnight, we're like, okay, he's just going to sleep in our bed because this is insane. He's not sleeping. So fast forward a couple months later, the baby is born. I'm in there probably like 2 weeks after the baby's born, and I'm finally like utilizing the nursery stuff that we had gotten. So I'm sitting in the rocking chair and I'm nursing the baby, and he falls asleep, and, you know, we're just kind of rocking, and I'm on my phone, and, you know, not a big deal. It's evening, and the sun goes down. And I remember like slowly feeling this sense of dread, like this feeling of complete impending doom. And I started to get goosebumps, and I could feel that somebody was watching me. And we were on the first floor. So I remember holding the baby and thinking like somebody's going to be in the window looking at me. And I'm thinking, how do I handle this? Do I just get up and walk out of the room, or do I look over at the window so they know they're caught? I don't know if I should yell for my boyfriend. I don't know what to do. So I couldn't take it anymore, and I look over towards the window, and there's nothing there. And I've got these goosebumps, and I look at the window and there's nothing there, and I'm waiting for somebody to like poke their head back in. Nothing. So I look back the other way and I realize my cat's on the ground, silent, but his shackles are raised, his back is arched, and he's in that like scaredy cat, but he's defending me. Like he's standing in front of me and the baby. He's facing the closet, shackles raised. He is like ready to fight. And I look at him and I'm like, Kovu. And he doesn't move. He's just staring down this closet. So I just got up and I walked out. I'm like, that was really, really creepy. That was terrifying. So that room definitely put me on edge for a couple days, but also like I just chalked it up to circumstance, whatever. So a few days later, again, I'm in there, and it was fine during the day. During the day, it was like this sweet, cute little nursery, no big deal. It was nighttime that it was scary. So again, I'm in the baby's room and I'm nursing the baby. The baby falls asleep, so I'm holding the baby. No big deal. I'm on my phone, and again, the sun went down and it got dark. And this time, I'm starting to feel uneasy and I'm starting to get the goosebumps, but what really alerted me was both of my cats started growling and hissing. And they're both facing the closet. They're facing the closet and growling at it. And the closet door is closed. Okay? It's closed. So I'm looking up and I'm like waiting for it to burst open, and I'm afraid to move. Like I'm sitting here afraid to move a muscle. Like I didn't even move my head. I just looked up with my eyes as I'm holding my newborn baby, thinking, oh my God, what is about to come out of this closet? So I very slowly get up and my cats are growling. Okay, they are angry. And I just slowly walk out of the room. And as soon as like I step over the threshold, my cats bolt. They are out of that room too. I slammed the door shut and I told my boyfriend at the time, I'm like, we're moving. We're moving. I am not going to be based on a true story. Not going to happen. We're going to move. And he's like, we're not moving. And I'm like, we are moving. We're moving. We are not staying here. This is too much. This is too much. And I'm not stepping foot in this bedroom again. When it's dark out, I will not be bringing the baby in here. Absolutely not. We're done. And we were actually having a little bit of money problems too. So we were toying with the idea of breaking the lease and moving somewhere cheaper anyways. So fine. We decided to break the lease and move somewhere else. So while we're moving out, a couple weeks later, one of the upstairs neighbors comes downstairs and she's like, oh my God, are you guys moving already? Like, what's going on? Are you guys okay? He's like, oh yeah, she's just being a wimp. Like she's saying that there's something in the closet freaking her out, and it scares the cats and it scares her and it scares the baby and blah, blah, blah. And the lady's face goes white and she's like, the people who lived here before you also moved because the children refused to sleep in their bedroom because they said there was a scary man in a trench coat that lived in the closet that only came out at night. I have goosebumps. Like I have whole body goosebumps. This still frightens me to this day. I do not claim this energy back into my life. And to this day, I will never forget how scared I was being in that bedroom.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable.
All right, so I came straight to the car to tell you all this one because I'm on my lunch break and we got 15 minutes. So biggest red flag. If the house or the apartment is cheap, almost too good to be true, it is. It's more than likely 9 times out of 10 haunted. Now, let me tell you why. Let me tell you my story. And a lot of my followers have heard this from the beginning because I did tell this story when I first made my TikTok. But ever since then, I've had a lot of new followers. I don't know if you guys went that back. Probably not. So let's just get to it. So I was about 16 years old. Sorry if I'm out of breath. This is a very intense story. I was about 16 years old. I was working, going to school, and I had 2 kids. I did apply for my first apartment because I'm like, if I'm going to be responsible, I'm going to go all the way. So I applied at these apartments that I saw that were kind of within budget, you know. Let me tell you how literally a day later, the manager calls me and was like, bring me $100 for a deposit and you're in. You can move in today. Didn't even ask me for the first month's rent. And I didn't think anything of it. I was 17 years old, trying to get out of my mama's house. So I was like, say yes, I'm on my way. No furniture, no nothing. And I went. Gave the lady $100. She handed me over my keys. Didn't even ask me for the first month's rent. Again, let me emphasize on that. And I was like, okay. Started moving my stuff in. Wasn't a lot because it was my first apartment. I really didn't have any help. So, you know,
first few days were okay. I invited my friend over. She started staying with me because she was dating my brother at the time. So me and her were very close, and him and her would always come over just to spend time with each other. Well, sorry if I keep doing that. I'm just eating. I'm on lunch. Now, tell me why one morning she comes to my room. I guess she got up early to cook breakfast, and she came to my room and she looked like she had just seen a ghost. And I'm like, what's wrong? And she's like, you have something in your apartment. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, something is in here. You have like a ghost or something. I'm like, you're tripping. Yeah, okay. I'm like, what happened? And she's like, I was cooking eggs, and when I tried to grab the salt, it literally moved out of my hand. And I'm like, girl, you're tripping. There's probably like oil or something. Like, there's no way that could happen. Anyways, I brushed it under the rug, and like small little things would happen. Like one day we were all watching a movie in the living room, and something hits the back of the wall. Okay, so this is the living room wall, and there's a couch in front of it. I had a big old picture frame that was cut in 3, so it made one big picture frame. Now when it hit the wall, the only 2 side ones started swaying like back and forth. The middle one didn't move at all. So it was just like, I looked back and I'm like, okay, that was weird. Mind you, we're all in the living room, nobody's in the kids' room. So I'm just like, maybe something fell, I don't know. Again, my mind was just trying to find logic as to why these little things were happening. So then I started dating somebody, and he would, stay the night every so often. And I remember this one night we were arguing. He stayed the night, and we had our backs faced to each other. So my back was faced towards him, his was faced towards mine. So I'm facing the wall. Mind you, the wall that I'm facing has a big, like, long window. Like the window goes all the way to the floor. So I turn, and as soon as I turn, I see the silhouette of somebody standing there. And I'm just like, I am terrified because I don't want to move, but I don't want to make too much noise because there is literally a man standing there. So I turn around and I'm like, there's somebody right there. So my boyfriend at the time turns around and he's like, oh shit. He's like, go turn on the light. And I'm like, boy, first red flag. I should have known then. But anyways, this isn't about him. Yeah, so he asked me to go turn it on. I'm like, looking at him like, are you stupid? Okay, I'm gonna go turn on. But when I said that, he got up and finally went to go turn on the light. Mind you, we had only been there like maybe 2 months. Curtains brand new. And when he turned on the light, my curtains were moved like if somebody was standing there. They're brand new curtains. So I'm just like, that was weird. Every night before I would go to bed, I would close my closet door. So this is my bed. My bed's right here. Right in front of my bed there was a closet, like a small little walk-in closet. Every night I would close my closet door. Every time in the morning it would be open, and I was just like, maybe the latch is loose. I would always try to make logical explanations for why little things would happen. Never thought anything of it till one day my daughter, she was about 2-3 years old at the time. She woke up in the middle of the night screaming, panicking, and mind you, it's just me and my 2 little ones living there at the time. So I wake up, and in their room they have a tall one window, and it's long too, and it wasn't the greatest of neighborhoods. So I freaked out and I thought somebody was hurting her. I run to the room, and she's in the corner in the dark crying, and she's like, mama. And I'm like, what? She's like, tell the blue lady to get out, she bit me. And I'm like, what? I turn on the lights, nobody's there. So I'm like, in my head, I'm like, she had a nightmare. She's like, she bit my finger. I'm looking at her finger. Her finger is red. Like, if somebody bit her or something bit her. So I'm like, maybe it was just a bad dream. Like, again, I put it off. And I had the 2 kids at the time. My daughter, the one that saw the blue lady, or had a dream about the blue lady. And my son, he was a year younger than her. He couldn't talk yet, but every time I would find him, he would be in the closet with the door closed and baby talking. Mind you, he wouldn't talk to nobody. He was a very, very silent kid. I'm trying not to do a part 2, so I'm going to try to do it as fast as I can. If y'all want any details, y'all ask me after this. So I remember one day I was looking for him all over the place, all over the house, because I had the door open because I had made something, I think it burned, and I let all the smoke go out of the house. So I left the door open, and my daughter and my son were sitting down on the couch looking at TV. I went to the restroom and I came out and my son was not there. So I'm like frantically looking for him, cannot find him anywhere, run outside. I'm about to call like the police, like, where's my son at? And then I'm looking in their rooms, nothing. Looking in my room, I can't find him anywhere. And I'm like, maybe somebody came in and got him, like I don't know. And so I hear baby talk, and I follow the voice, and I find him in the closet. All the lights are off in my daughter's room, and there's no closet light. I open the closet door, and he's sitting in the closet corner, as if like if somebody was cradling him, and he's just there, just baby talking, like happy. And I'm just like, what is going on, you know? Okay, so then it gets worse. So these little like incidents just keep getting worse and worse. My mom comes over one day, and I tell her, you know, some weird things have been happening around the house. Emery keeps saying she's seeing a blue lady. They keep talking about this blue lady. My son's doing some weird things, and she's like, oh, we'll settle this, you know? So my mom goes to my daughter's room, and she's like baby talking with her, because my daughter's 2-3 at the time. I think my son was 1, she was 2. And my mom's telling her like, where's the blue lady at, baby? So my daughter goes in the room, and she looks at her bed. Mind you, it's a little toddler bed. It's literally like 1 inch, 2 inches from the floor. And she's like, hers right there, grandma. Hers right there, pointing at her bed. So my mom, she goes and pretends like she's telling the lady, get out of her room. Get out of the room right now. And my mom says, there, baby, she's gone. She's not gonna bother you anymore. My daughter turns around, and she's like, no, grandma, her's still there. And me and my mom said, oh, I'm out. And she's like, well, where? Show me. So my little toddler goes and lifts up her little bed, her little toddler bed, and she's like, hers right there. And me and my mom are looking at each other like, oh my gosh. Okay, anyways, so I'm like, she has quite an imagination. My daughter was a very, very, very social kid. She talked a lot. So I was just like, maybe she's using her imagination. I don't know. So let me fast forward. It's New Year's. I just we go to my boyfriend's parents' house, and we're there. It's like 12, maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, and I get this really gut feeling, and I'm telling him all night, let's go. I want to go. And he's just, one more drink, and we'll go. And I'm just like, no, something don't feel right. Like, let's go. And so he says, okay, fine, let's go. It's already 2 o'clock in the morning. So we head home. When we get home, my stuff, like my apartment was broken into. Everything was just flipped over, and just, it was ransacked. And I was just like, I knew that gut feeling was for a reason. So I called the cops, and they come over, and the cop is doing the report, and he's looking at his buddy, because it was 2 of them. He's looking at his buddy. He's like, remember that story that I told you? He's like, it happened here. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, what happened here? Me nosy, because I want to know too, what happened here? And then the cop goes, oh shit. And I'm like, what happened? He's like, nah, if I tell you, you wouldn't be able to sleep at night. So I'm sitting there like, now you gotta tell me, because I'm living here. Like, what happened? And he's like, we're gonna have to do a part 2, because we're hitting the limit.